Okay, everyone, that's the recording started again, so we'll continue on with the process, and I'm going to bring in Carol Heaton for Environmental Health. Thanks.
Good afternoon. So we've received all the reports during this consultation period and reviewed them and found that we are satisfied with the materials presented and have no concerns. To acknowledge Mr Davis, we've received your report as well and reviewed that this week and find that it doesn't alter our decision. I know that you raised issues over the proxy locations, so I just want to acknowledge that. This wasn't something that was stipulated by us. We would recommend locations, however, it is common practice for proxy locations to be used. And this can be worked through with the maths, given it's the acoustics, it's based on mathematics. So we would be satisfied with that, and we did look at the issue raised by yourself, but we would remain of the belief that the report is valid and there is no concerns for us to address on that matter. I'd also just like to acknowledge your concerns about your business. This isn't something that we're able to factor. We are able to factor general human health, but no specifics of somebody's business. Okay, so I just wanted to acknowledge that as well, and for the purposes of the councillors. As I say, we've reviewed all information and remain satisfied that the reports submitted are valid and that we have no concerns over the noise levels in the area.
Thank you, Carol. Does anybody get any questions for Carol? No. Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Filson.
Just for kind of clarification, David mentioned that the Harrowford Cricket Home site there and the old Johnny Walker site. Was there anything that came from that, from the VOC's information, health-wise?
So the Ayrshire, as has been referred to, is beyond our remit, so we would need to defer to SEPA and the Scottish Government on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to bring in Fiona for the planning, who's going to cover any points raised during the hearing.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few points for me to come in. Just bear with me whilst I work through my notes. Mr Davis did mention about the council doing its own noise assessment. We have gone out to specialist consultants when required, but that's been on specific complex issues, generally in the wind farm side of things. We're happy to refer to do that when we need to do so, but we don't feel we need to do it here. If we do go out to a noise consultant, it's not to have our own report done, it's actually to have the applicant's study reviewed, but that's on specialist issues with specialist specialist matters, and generally it's like the likes of the wind farm projects, etc. Here we've got environmental health in-house, and they've been more than happy and able to give us comments on that matter. In terms of flooding, it has been covered, but we have consulted both ARA Flooding, who are the local flood prevention authority. We have also consulted SEPA as the National Flood Prevention Authority. SEPA is a statutory consultee, and we have had no objections from either body, both in national and local perspectives. The SEPA's detailed reply is contained within the report, and in SEPA's response, they have referred to the policies of NPF 4. Let me just see where else I want to go to. The Scottish Government direction was issued in terms of soils and climate, but not specifically and solely on flooding. The NPF 4 has been evaluated both in terms of climate and in flooding. The climate policies are referred to in page 160 and 161 of your papers, but NPF 4 is referred to in the Scottish Government direction that they have issued on soils and climate. We have discussed in terms of the policy requirement for the rural protection area with our colleagues in policy before today. We did that through the application processing. Our colleagues in policy in respect of the rural protection area have advised that the rural protection area is a policy tool for managing residential development in the rural area and is not applicable to other non-residential matters. Policy have advised that there are other policies in the plan that give wider, more all-encompassing protection to agricultural land, green networks, and a specific policy for managing business and industrial development in the rural area. That is our policy colleagues reference in respect of Mrs. Roberts' comments regarding the matters of the rural protection area. In terms of black mould, we obviously have referred to the Scottish Government report that's been referred to earlier today. We have referred to that as a material consideration in the report. I don't have a page number, I can get it if you want it. We do also, however, stand by that the conclusions of that report. There is no evidence of health matters. We have, in amenity terms, recommended condition number 30, which is on page 256, and you'll see that they're relevant to the amenity impacts of the black mould fungus. So we have referred to that as part of our recommendation here today. We did do a site visit, as members are aware. Members were familiar with the area. In terms of paragraph 7 on page 16 of your report, we have referred to the distances to rural properties in the vicinity of the application site to make sure that members are fully aware, and all plans and documentation are available as background papers to the report. We do have a separate application with us at the moment that's still to be determined for hazardous substances consent in terms of the storage of the material on site. That will be determined separately to this application under the relevant hazardous substances consent regulations. Private water supplies, we have taken the advice of SEPA and Environmental Health. There is also a condition number 16 on page 253 of your papers, members, which refers to private water supply mitigation strategy. We do have a general lighting condition as well. I'm aware you raised that, Councillor McGee. There is a general lighting condition stated, if you just bear with me, I've just moved page. Sorry. It is number 26, and it's a general lighting condition that says lighting associated with the development shall be so installed and arranged as to prevent any direct light spill onto nearby properties. And you've obviously heard the applicant in terms of their detailed proposal for lighting. I'm probably going to rest on that for the moment. And as a team, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have, members. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. At this point, I'm going to open up to members for questions, discussion. Could I add that we keep it to questions at this time and not come to determination, and we'll go to determination once we've exhausted all the questions. Okay, over to you, members. Can I ask a question, Fiona? Yep. But condition 12 is an appointment of an environmental clerk of works. Now, given that the applicant's proposing a peat wetland, can we stipulate that whoever's appointed has experience in working in that field?
I'm going to pass this to David to answer, if that's okay, just from his work in the wind farm field.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. Chair. The environmental clerk of works can actually cover quite a wide remit, and you get different specialists that can fulfil an environmental clerk of works role. So you can have ecows that are more into the kind of ecological side, or perhaps it is peat, for example, and they have general experience across a whole wide range of different topics. Because of the nature of these sites, you get lots of different environmental impacts and different things to monitor. So in the first instance, we would obviously look for someone that was capable of doing that wider remit. But given the nature of the site and what's coming forward, I would expect that through this submission that the applicant would be able to evidence that it's someone with reasonable experience in working with peat. So I wouldn't say we would necessarily have to get down to the point of stipulating that they are some sort of expert or anything like that in it, but we would expect that that's encompassed in the role as part of their wider remit. So it'll be incumbent on the applicant in terms of any terms of appointment to make sure that they're appointing an ECOW that has sufficient experience to cover off the various different plans and so on that we're asking them to monitor. And one of them is in relation to the peat management plan and the works roundabout there. So that would essentially come through the condition, in my opinion, and we wouldn't have to go a step further of making sure it's a peatland specialist, but we would look for someone with sufficient experience as part of that appointment.
If I can just come in as well there, the condition does require that they submit monthly reports and be in liaison with us, so we would have that involvement as part of that as well, as David has said.
Thanks, David. Fiona, members, it. Yep.
Can I ask, would that environmental consultant be on site for the whole construction period? Was it 3 years or 10 years?
if I can come to your chair, it wouldn't necessarily have to be on site every minute of every day. It'll kind of depend on what's happening on the site and the risks that's involved. So ordinarily, it's normally dependent on the nature of what the construction is and what's happening. The ECOW might be there at some points on a full-time basis, and maybe other times maybe only required 2 or 3 times a week. And then depending on the types of works that's taking place, they may only have to visit the site occasionally. Essentially, I suppose what I'm saying is it depends on the nature of the construction at the time, but the ECOW appointment will have to reflect the risks that are taking place and to make sure that someone is there sufficiently to advise the developer. So during the main construction works, I'd expect an ECOW to be on site quite a lot. But as certain elements of construction wind down, it may be that they don't need to be there as much. So we're not necessarily stipulating a full-time ECOW, but as part of the role and remit of that ECOW, at some points they will be the equivalent of full-time, but it's a subtle requirement depending on what's happening on the site, and that would be controlled through the terms of the appointment, and it would be for the applicant to put forward that justification to us and set out how they think the ECOW needs to be there in relation to their construction and how things all work like that, and we would assess it at that point to ensure that it's sufficient. But it is quite a flexible role, and we're obviously quite experienced with ECOWs across a lot of large environmental projects. That is generally how it works. That sometimes they're there all the time, and other times they don't need to be there quite full time, but they still have that appointment. They are still appointed by the developer. They'll have an overarching remit, and if required, they'll have to attend the site. So they won't just drop in and out. It'll be a continual job, but not necessarily full-time presence on site.
Yep, Councillor Maitland.
Forgive me, I'm sure this is in the papers, but I'm seeking clarification because it's 257 pages and I can't find it. Bus stops, I believe that there's going to be integrated public transport. Can someone confirm that for me, please? Thank you.
Just bear with me till I find it, but there is a condition in this regard. Condition 10, page 250. Prior to works commencing on site, details of new bus stops to be submitted to approved in writing by the Planning Authority, and that would be in consultation with Ayrshire Roads Alliance and Strathclyde Passenger for Transport, who would deal with that side of things as well. So hopefully that gives you that comfort.
Any further questions? Or are we going to move to determination? I don't see any questions, so I think we're at a point where we can determine this application. I'd like to move approval of the application. Oh, subject to the conditions listed. Yep. Fiona, you're going to come in and explain that, yep.
Apologies. It was just to clarify that at the very start of my presentation, I picked up a little typo in condition 15, where it was down as condition 15A, and then there was the word by instead of the word B. So it was just to clarify that that was part of your proposal.
Yeah, that's. So, Councillor Maitland, you want to come in the second?
Apologies, I forgot we were being recorded. Yes, that's absolutely fine.
So, got a proposal for it. Is anybody else otherwise minded? Not okay. That's the application is approved subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Just to confirm, as per the last stage of the process, and also as members were advised earlier during the hearing, that the council is on notice in this one, that it may or may not be called in. So the effect of the decision is that the committee has now determined support for the recommendation. As planning authority, we will intimate now to the Scottish ministers that the planning authority is minded to grant. The planning directorate will consider that. They will either allow that then to be issued, or they will make the decision to call it in if they're so minded, at which point they would hand it to a reporter who will then determine what process should apply to their examination of any matters or any aspects of this, should it be called in. And I would simply say that it's not a straight grant. It's now a referral to Scottish ministers that the council's minded to grant, and it will then be for the Directorate on behalf of Scottish ministers to determine if they are minded to call it in and whether there should be any further process in that regard. So that's the outcome today, subject to notification to ministers and any exercise of their discretion thereafter. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you for that clarification, David. Now, I'm aware that we've got quite a few members of the public in the gallery. You're more than welcome to stay, but we'll have got other items of business. Up to yourself. If you'd like to leave at this time, it would be probably the ideal time to do that. We'll just take a wee minute while the gallery. Right, thank you, members. We're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda now, and that is planning application number 22/0004/S36. It's a consultation under Section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989 for the construction and operation of a wind farm comprising up to 9 wind turbines of up to 200 metres in blade tip height and associated infrastructure, including site access and access tracks, substation compound and communications mast, borrow pits, hard stands and crane pads, temporary construction compounds and battery energy storage systems. Development includes a wind farm generating capacity of up to 54 megawatts and battery energy storage system generating capacity of up to 45 megawatts at Sklenchuk Wind Farm, land to west of A713 near Waterside. I'm going to hand over to Graham to take us through that presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Just as an update before we get into the main presentation, just to update you on details in the committee report. You'll note the committee report refers to an objection from the Scottish Dark Sky Observatory submitted to the Scottish Government. Just to update and correct that position, it seems that the Scottish Dark Sky Observatory removed its objection to the proposed Sklenchuk wind farm back in June 2023, subject to a condition. This objection removal was only published on the Energy Consents Unit website this Tuesday, which is obviously after lodging of the report, publication of the report, and Chair's briefing on Monday. So that was just an update on that. The condition requested was that details regarding the lighting associated with the construction and operational periods of the development be submitted for the approval of the Planning Authority in consultation with the Scottish Dark Sky Observatory, and that dark sky friendly lighting be used in accordance with the Council's Dark Sky Park Lighting Supplementary Guidance. So that was just to provide an update on that, because any reference to an objection from them is obviously no longer the case. So the Council has received a consultation request from the Scottish Government for an application made under Section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989 for the proposed Sklenchuk wind farm, as generating capacity is in excess of 50 megawatts. The Council, as a formal consultee in this process, requires to provide a response to the Scottish Ministers to the consultation, and can either offer no objection to the Section 36 application as submitted, offer no objection subject to the imposition of appropriate conditions and/or legal obligations it considers necessary to make the development acceptable, or to object to the application, stating the grounds on which the objection is made. This slide here just shows the application site boundary for the proposed Sklenchuk wind farm. The site is located to the east of Patna and Waterside. Sorry, that's not right. It's located to the west, well, south of Patna and the west of Waterside, on the upper slopes of the Doon Valley on the west. And it extends across both East Ayrshire and South Ayrshire Council areas. Access would be taken from the A713 with an additional access from the B741 to the south of the site. This slide shows the proposed layout of the Sklenshire wind farm. Key infrastructure proposed includes 9 wind turbines, 4 of which would be a maximum height of 180 metres and 5 of which would be a maximum height of 200 metres. Associated turbine foundations, hard standings and switchgear kiosks, access tracks, control buildings, a battery energy storage system, and access tracks, temporary construction compounds and laydown areas, including car parking, and improved walking trails. Just for information here, that you can see on the side here, turbines 5, 6, 7 and 9 would be 180 metres high, and these are the ones here, sort of the easternmost ones within that array. The other 5 would be 200 metres high, including the 4 of which are located in South Ayrshire Council. The proposed development would have a total generating capacity of approximately 99 megawatts, taking account of the wind turbines and the battery energy storage system. The construction period would last approximately 14 months, with an operational lifetime of 50 years, and then decommissioning and site restoration would take place thereafter. The Council has consulted a number of consultees, while Scottish ministers have consulted more widely, as they will be the ones determining the application. Of the consultees consulted by the Council, none have raised any objections to the proposed development, although this is subject to conditions in many cases. The consultation undertaken by the Scottish Government has resulted in a number of responses from various organisations, most of whom do not object to the application, often subject to conditions. Glasgow Prestwick Airport and NATS both object due to aviation safety impacts, although discussions are ongoing between the aviation bodies and the applicant, with a view to agreeing potential mitigation. As the Scottish ministers will be determining the application, it will be for them to determine these matters when reaching a decision on the application. A review of the Scottish Government's Energy Consents Unit website yesterday indicated there were 362 representations received by the Scottish ministers in respect of the application, 42 objecting to it and 320 in support of it. Some of the main concerns, amongst others, related to landscape and visual impacts, aviation lighting impacts, shadow flicker impacts, and cumulative impacts. Reasons for support include contribution towards renewable energy generation targets and community benefits, with the 9cc group supporting the proposed development because of the community benefits. It will be for Scottish ministers as the determining authority to consider these representations and what weight they attach to the matters raised in coming to a decision on the application. There now follows a series of slides showing photo montages and wire lines from a select number of viewpoints to provide a sense of some of the landscape and visual impacts likely throughout the area. Some of the photo montages have been scaled to better fit the height of the slide, as when viewing photo montages on a monitor, they should be enlarged to fit the full height of the screen to more accurately reflect the scale of the turbines in the view. The slides are all taken from the environmental information and are used for context only in this presentation, with the detailed environmental information available to view as background papers. So this is from viewpoint 3, which is the northern end of Waterside, and this is approximately 2.2 kilometres from the nearest turbine. You can see the baseline photograph on the sort of upper section of the screen, and below that you have the cumulative wireline. And the proposed turbines are the ones in red. So this is part of the photo montage from Waterside, showing the representative views of the turbines in this location. And that's, if you like, the left-hand side of the view that was on the screen earlier. And this is looking slightly further to the right to show the other ones. And I would note some of the members visited this viewpoint yesterday. So again, this is from viewpoint 4, and this is representing views from Patna, which is approximately 2.1 kilometres from the nearest turbine. And again, we have the baseline photograph above and the cumulative wireline below. Once again, the proposed Sklenshire wind turbines are shown in red. And again, this is just one half of the view from that viewpoint, with the photo montage showing the turbines superimposed there. And again, that's looking slightly further to the other half of that screen that was on earlier. This is a nighttime photo montage from this location. This represents the lighting at 200 candela, which is the worst case scenario from this point, accounting for the intensity reduction that would be employed by vertical angle. And again, some of the members also visited this site yesterday. This slide is from viewpoint 2, representing the Doon Valley Railway at Waterside, approximately 2 kilometres from the nearest turbine. And this is very near to the Waterside slide that was shown just earlier, a few seconds ago. Again, this is a low light photo montage, and again shows the aviation lighting at 200 candela, which again represents the worst case scenario, accounting for the intensity reduction by vertical angle. It should be noted that further intensity reduction in good visibility would also be employed in aviation lighting, which enables lights to be dimmed to 10% of their normal level. So lighting from both these viewpoints shown here would on many occasions actually be reduced to 20 candela. And this is a photo montage taken from viewpoint 11, representing views from Dunmellington. And this is approximately 5.6 kilometres from the nearest turbine. And you can see from here the apparent scale of the turbines is much reduced even at this distance compared to the viewpoints around 2 kilometres from the turbines. In terms of the assessment of the impacts of the proposed development, landscape and visual impacts are the most obvious and apparent impacts associated with wind farms. As the slides have demonstrated, there will be varying impacts from different locations and distances from the proposed turbines. There will be significant landscape and visual impacts, though as evidenced in the viewpoints, the greatest of these tend to be limited to within approximately 3 kilometres of the turbines, with impacts reducing in magnitude at distances of about 5 kilometres and beyond. Significant impacts would also be experienced from heritage assets, such as around the Waterside Ironworks. Impacts would also extend into the hours of darkness due to the requirement for visible aviation lighting, though as noted there is proposed mitigation which would notably reduce the lighting intensity required. Nevertheless, the impacts are most evident within the closest 2 to 3 kilometres of the turbines, affecting the northern part of the Doon Valley, primarily around Patton and Waterside, which is considered to represent a localised significant impact. Current National Planning Framework 4 notes within Policy 11 that significant landscape and visual impacts are to be expected from some forms of renewable energy developments, and that where these are localised, these will generally be acceptable. Noise from the wind farm and battery energy storage system can be controlled by suitable limits, with the Council's noise consultants, ACON, having advised on these and which can be discussed with the Scottish Government's Energy Consents Unit, should ministers be minded to approve the development. Other impacts cover a range of issues such as ecology, ornithology, forestry, hydrology, traffic and peatland, amongst others. Most impacts are capable of being addressed by appropriate mitigation, subject to being secured by conditions. In terms of Policy 3 of NPF 4 and the requirement for significant biodiversity enhancement, there remains a question mark over the extent to which the current proposals would comprise significant biodiversity enhancement or simply mitigation of the impacts. However, it will be for Scottish ministers to determine whether the applicant's proposals go far enough to qualify as significant biodiversity enhancements or whether more is needed. If more is needed, it's likely that conditions would provide a suitable mechanism for securing further habitat enhancements over and above those currently proposed to achieve the aim of delivering such significant biodiversity enhancements on the site. In terms of financial implications, the applicant has so far not provided a decommissioning report, so we have not been able to start reviewing the quantum of any financial guarantee for the decommissioning, restoration and aftercare of the site, should consent ultimately be granted. However, the applicant has agreed to enter into a Section 75 legal agreement with the Council to provide a financial guarantee, and the Council would expect negotiations on the quantum to continue as Scottish ministers consider the application. In terms of other potential financial implications, should the Planning Committee be minded to object to the proposed development, contrary to the recommendation of the Chief Governance Officer, this will trigger a public local inquiry, and this will result in financial implications, including the potential costs incurred in engaging external expert advice, support or representation, giving evidence on the Council's behalf at the inquiry. So to conclude, the proposed development will result in a number of impacts, some of which will be significant, particularly in terms of landscape and visual impacts. However, many impacts are capable of being mitigated, and residual impacts are not considered on balance when weighing up the benefits and impacts of the development in the current policy framework context to be so adverse that they would be unacceptable. On that basis, it is recommended that the Council does not object to development and informs the Scottish ministers in its response, should they be minded to grant consent for the development, that the Council's position of no objection is subject to the conclusion of a Section 75 legal agreement to include those matters detailed within the legal implications section of the report, and also that the Planning Authority is to be involved in any discussions with the Scottish Government and the applicant concerning appropriate planning conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Members are going to open up for discussion and comment. Councillor Wilson.
I'll just get a wee bit of clarification for Graham. It says in the report there that in the planning history that it was just 2017. I believe there's another application before that. So this is the third time, or this is the second time it's been turned down by Scottish ministers. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. In terms of planning history, there was an application, if I can turn to the page. This is in paragraph 6 of the report. And there was a previous Section 36 application on approximately this same sort of site, which was called Kears Hill Wind Farm. That application comprised 17 turbines at 149.9 metres high, and obviously slightly different layout. So the applicant has tried to address some of those reasons. That was refused by the Scottish ministers. The applicant did try to address some of those reasons, so they've reduced the number of turbines from 17 down to 9, and they have shifted them further away from the Doon Valley, so they're more located to the west, which is why we've got 4 of the turbines in South Ayrshire now and only 5 in East Ayrshire. Yes, they have increased the height over and above the 149.9 previously, but as we've set out in the report, taking into account these measures, they have gone some way to addressing those issues, maybe not as successful as it could have been, but on balance and weighing up these issues and the residual impacts, we're still satisfied that there's been enough done here that we would obviously not recommend objecting to it. Thank you.
No, I'm just getting back up.
Sorry, Chair, just I appreciate that the question was, had there been 2, but in terms of the timeline, Kears Hill was the one that the council objected to here and took the decision to object. It came in 2013. The decision was taken, I think it says here, my eyes are so bad, 8th of August 2014 Planning Committee. So Graham's response is there was the Kears Hill one previously, i.e. one previous one. Councillor Filson's question, Graham, was there one before that?
So thank you. No, as far as I'm aware, that's the only application for wind farm on this site, with Glenshire being the second one.
Back in local knowledge, we're going back a wee bit here, right enough, but I think there was one for 36 to start with, and then they reduced to 17. Now they're back again to reduce it to 9. But I could be wrong.
The one you're referring to, Councillor, I think was probably the early scoping layout. It was their initial proposals where they had many more in terms of their very first layout, and then they narrow it down to what the application became. So I think it wasn't a previous application for 30 or so. It was the same application. Well, it was the application. It became 17.
Yeah.
That was part of their design iteration process. So
it was
it's only one application.
There was many more before that. I went to, yeah, that's right.
It was. Yeah.
That's maybe where I'm getting confused. Thanks very much.
But for absolute clarity, for the benefit of all members, there was one previous application that was actually determined by the authority in 2014, and at that time it was objected to, and it did go to an inquiry at that time, and the reporter upheld that objection, having regard to the policy framework at that time. Thank you.
David. Councillor Stewart.
Just a quick question about the road. That I don't know if it's even relevant for this, but it is a really busy road, and it's a fast road. In fact, I nearly got wiped out yesterday on coming away for the site visit. Will there be a study done on that road, or has that already happened?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I mean, the applicant has undertaken a traffic impact assessment, taking account of the volume of traffic that would be required for the construction of the wind farm and ongoing operation. That's obviously, we have a temporary construction period of approximately 14 months, during which you would have obviously the highest volume of traffic associated with the proposed development. Once construction was completed, you would only have infrequent visits to the site for maintenance by vehicles. We consulted ARA, and ARA are content with it. They've raised no objections to this proposed development, subject to conditions which would address fairly standard matters regarding wind farms, such as a construction traffic management plan, appropriately designed site layout and access, signage, etc. In terms of sort of safety of the site and the access at the moment, obviously it is currently used as an access from the A713 across the river at the moment. So what they would be proposing would be an upgrade of that access. So that should actually represent an improvement over the access at the moment. And there's also a secondary access on the B741 to the south of the site, which is also currently used as an active access for forestry, which obviously would support HGVs associated with that use. So the two accesses are both existing and they're both currently used, one of which is accessing onto the A713 at the moment, and that would be upgraded and should mark or should represent an improvement. And like I said, ARA are satisfied with it, subject to conditions which are fairly standard on wind farms. So we'd be seeking those conditions with the ministers if they were minded to grant consent.
Councillor Stewart, is that a fresh hand up? Or?
As it's just on the back of that then. So we've had about 7 very serious accidents with a couple of fatalities, and it's actually been down to flooding on that road. So will that also be looked at? I mean, obviously we were at the site visit yesterday, and that bridge that you're talking about comes off quite a bad bend. So for me, it's how would we get HGVs and that to actually navigate that? I know you're saying they're going to be a bigger bridge built, but I just don't get how we're going to actually keep that road safe.
Can you just hold on a minute? The fire alarm's going off in here. Test.
All right.
So,
Up and run then.
Know when it goes off.
Where was it when we needed it?
That's you now, Councillor Stewart. We can hear you again.
I know, I'm still laughing. So and the members that were there yesterday actually seen how fast cars were coming down off that bend across by the houses. So for me, I don't know how we could widen the road there, because we've got the river and the houses, and there's no much more space to actually move that road round about. So I think I would like to see something more round about that, or hear something more round about how we would actually navigate the safety on that road.
Chair, through you. I'm not sure, Councillor Stewart. I mean, Graham has addressed it. As members can see from the report, our colleagues in ARA have been fully consulted in this. They've had regard to the traffic impact assessment report submitted by the applicant, which covers both the construction period, which is the main one for the wind farms. There's not as many visitors or traffic once they're up and running. I think what Graham clearly said was it's not the road that would be widened, but it is the existing junction that would be widened in order to provide improvements. And colleagues in ARA are quite satisfied that the road, may have given rise to the other action you've said, etc. In terms of the impact of this particular development in that road, and having regard to the vehicles that will be coming there, in terms of the HGVs, etc., then we can, and I'm not pointing the finger at them. And just to cover the point, ARA aren't here today because the colleague who would have been here had unfortunately to be somewhere else, and he couldn't be in 2 places. And until yesterday, I wasn't aware there was might be any particular need for our roads issues arising or need for ARA input. But as I've said, the position is ARA have no concerns. They have been consulted and they are satisfied with the traffic impact assessment that's been put forward, that the consequences and the traffic movements arising from this development can be accommodated with the road as it is, subject to any proposals to widen the entrance that exists at the moment to accommodate their needs. And that's the position we're in.
Thanks, David. Can I ask a question, Graham, on the aviation lights? Now, are the aviation lights on 24/7? And if they are, how far away are we from getting automatic aviation lights that turn on when they're required over the flight path? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. No, aviation lighting only comes on towards the evening time, so they're not on 24 hours a day. So it would only come on, I believe it's a timing sort of sensor that will trigger them as the light levels fall. The lighting will come on, and obviously again, as we get towards daylight hours again, they'll come off again. In terms of aviation activated lighting, I can't say for certain how far away we are from that. I know it's something that applicants are proposing now, and I know the Scottish Government are aware of it. I know the aviation bodies are also aware of it. It's not currently Civil Aviation Authority policy to adopt it, although it is in use in other countries throughout Europe. And I do understand that there is a working group looking at this, and there are various draft documents which are currently sort of being drafted / consulted on amongst the relevant bodies. So it's something which is I envisage is likely to happen at some point in the future, although I'll be perfectly honest, I couldn't tell you when, and that's sort of out with my expertise, unfortunately. But it is something that the relevant bodies are looking at, and it's certainly something which, if it's not implementable at the moment, it's certainly something that we would discuss with as conditions with the Scottish ministers, with a view to having it delivered as and when it is capable of being implemented.
Just on that point, because we have had correspondence from interested third parties as well, and I think it's appropriate for the record just to endorse what Graham has said. And just to assure members, in case they thought any of that was a wee bit uncertain, the bottom line is the wording of the condition will require them, as a pre-commencement condition, to agree with the Civil Aviation Authority an appropriate lighting and safety regime. What they're offering at the moment is actually at the front end of the technology, as I understand it. They're offering a solution which has been developed, as Graham has rightly said, is in play in other parts of the world. It is new technology, therefore it's still to be signed off by the likes of the Civil Aviation Authority. But the proposal would be that if that is acceptable to everyone else, then you would have that more controlled lighting, because it only comes on during the nighttime hours when it's activated by aircraft or flights imminent, etc., as opposed to being on through all the hours of darkness. So it would be an improvement. If the CAA can get comfortable with that, then it may well be that this might be the first one in Scotland. If they don't, then it will be the kind of more bog standard on all night lighting arrangement, because but only on the basis that's all that the CAA are able to accept at this time. So it can either be an improved position or it'll be the standard position, but it has been dealt with and appropriately assessed and treated within the conditioning, and the conditioning would allow any solution that's acceptable to everyone else to be developed and implemented. Is that fair?
Yeah, and just to add to what David said there, in terms of even if the aviation activated lighting isn't delivered, anytime soon, obviously the applicant is proposing mitigation in terms of intensity reduction in clear conditions, whereby the lighting would be reduced to only 10% of its normal value. Plus you've got the shielding, which reduces the intensity even further depending on angle of view. So as we've noted here, with the angle of view reduction lighting, the 2000 candela, which is normally required on the hubs, with the angle reduction, that would, a worst case scenario would be 200 candela rather than 2000. And in clear conditions, you could reduce that further to only 10% of that. So that would be 20 candela rather than 200. So there is those mitigation measures over and above any potential aviation activated lighting.
That's Graham. Councillor Watts, you want to come on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's not so much a question. It's more, having been on the site visit yesterday, looking at the montages as they've come up, it's more really a matter of my thoughts, which, to be fair, I think that the development it's too close. It's extremely overbearing on the communities of Waterside and Patna. So I personally would, myself, I would object, because I think it is just too close to these communities, to be honest, in my view. So, as I said, it's not really a question, it's just really putting my view across.
Chair, through you, I appreciate it wasn't a question, but in order to, again, try and address that, what I would say is, as members know, we often come here and advise that sometimes recommendations are more clear-cut, sometimes they're more finely balanced. Taking this one in the round, and as was pointed out previously, there was a previous application for a greater number of turbines, but at a lower height, all just below the 150 metre level. We objected. It's not the habit of this council to tilt at windmills, as I often say, and object for the point of objecting or the sake of objecting. But equally, if we believe it's appropriate to object, we will fight our corner all the way through all process, as we've done in the past. South Kyle was an example. I remember standing in what is still our members' lounge with a former head of planning, as he was told by the chief executive of one of these companies that he was well just going in there and lying down and changing his recommendation because we get to an inquiry. It would all be down to his professional view on visual impact, and it would cost the council £500 million. We went and we stood to the objection. It went to an inquiry. The reporter upheld it and indicated that the level of development we were prepared to consent was an appropriate level, and fully supported our position. So it's not that we don't have the appetite for a fight or to object to things when it's appropriate to object. That was established the last time when the council did object to Kears Hill. But my point being about trying to pick our fights, and it's not about winning them, but at least trying not to lose too many. The reporter upheld that one. The applicant's position is that they have taken on board the issues that arose, and they have moved the location of these slightly further. They have reduced the number, so they're positives. But as we've acknowledged throughout the report, they have also significantly increased the height. But it's not just the detail of the proposals that have changed. What's come in an intervening period since the last public inquiry is NPF 4, and it's our assessment of this application under NPF 4 that we have brought to you and have to bring to you in support of the recommendation, which on this occasion is not to object. In essence, that's because we believe that's the right outcome and that's the right assessment of the proposals. But I recognise, and I'll finish where I started, that there are often occasions where some applications and proposed developments come to the committee, and there is more scope for a divergence of views on those kind of matters. So it is a close one, but on this one, and having regard to NPF 4, which changes the national policy landscape, and we can only assess this one against the current policy landscape, then I stand by and I support, and I'm not being defensive, the recommendation. But we have been over this. We have been over this again, and then recently I referred to there was a third party expressed interest and raised certain points, and we reviewed it again in light of those points. So we have been over this with the old cliche of a fine tooth comb, and against that background, our position remains as set out in the report. But in the context of Councillor Watt's point, and the report, I think, fairly reflects the point he's made, that these will still have an impact, but it's an impact that in the context of NPF 4 is considered now to be acceptable.
Thanks, David. Councillor Watts, I'm going to come back. I don't know if you've officially put a motion forward for objection, but I'll come back to that. We want to exhaust any questions first. Can I ask a clarification of the fact that the wind turbines have moved west, so 4 are now in South Ayrshire, and I believe South Ayrshire haven't objected? How would that impact any way forward for us?
The bottom line is that that's their position. The Energy Consent Unit will have regard to all representations received, but as the report, and Graham rightly said, as the main authority, should we choose to object to this, then it will automatically occasion a public local inquiry. The fact that South would then just choose whether or not they wish to participate, their positions on the record is not objecting, but there would still be a public local inquiry. It would then be up to the reporter as to exactly which issues would be focused on at that inquiry, and it may best be they would focus on the 5 within East Ayrshire, but they may look at them all in the round. But the bottom line is that doesn't tie this council's hands either way with respect to South Ayrshire Council. That was their position on the merits of presumably looking at the 4 in their area directly. We take our own decision here, but as the main lead, if the council wishes to object, it will automatically lead to a public local inquiry because this is section 36 under the Electricity Act. Thanks, David. Councillor Filson, you're welcome.
Thanks, Chair. And I've got to thank members that came yesterday to the site visit as well. The report, to me, members, the report says it all there. If it says visual impact or significant impact, it says it 100 times. We've been doing, as you came yesterday, as you see, it was a bad day. You couldn't see Dulsalach, but it's not just the visual impact, it's the cumulative impact. You've got Dulsalach over the hill, then you have Slintach, and then you've got Knockkippen on this side, with the village of Dunaskin right in the middle, and all the houses all face straight onto Slintach. Definitely, well, the mental health for the people who staying there with these red lights going out and in all the time, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Councillor Stewart mentioned road safety there. Dunaskin has been really a terrible bit for accidents. We've lost, I think, about 5 people there at that bit. If you go out, if you go out the B741 between Dolmellington and New Cumnock, there's one wind turbine, and that's an ex-councillor Walter Young's farm, and it's got a red light on the top of it, and that's all you see going along that road. It distracts your eye all the time. Now we're going down towards Dunaskin, and we're going to have 8 lights on the hill at the top, and that's going to be a distraction as well. And it only takes that slight minute to look up to that, and then you're into an accident again. So there definitely is a road problem here. All the instances that's happened there. And I would like to have a scenario here, but obviously, David, it could have had to be somewhere else today. So that's a big impact. We've just put an application in there for the Galloway National Park as well. We're seen here as a gateway from the north into the Galloway National Park. That doesn't help either. Dunaskin and Straighton communities have had a noise monitoring report as well, and they can hear the Dulsalic one just now at Dunaskin. So it's not just the high frequency noise, it's a low frequency noise as well. It has an impact, especially on children that's autistic, or even the farm animals with day, that they say, this report says that it can have an effect. So there's a lot of things here that's we're not thinking about the community itself. The SDSO have taken away their objection, but they're not going to be building it back in East Ayrshire. It doesn't look like it. But our ambition, as we're at a village in the stars in Dolmellington Parish, we still want to have an observatory in Dolmellington. So this would really impact on an observatory getting rebuilt in Dolmellington. So we're not, we want to move in just now? No.
Well, what we'll do is I'll open up for further questions, and then we'll come visit if there's any
Thank you.
motion to be put forward. There doesn't seem to be any questions, but I did promise to go back to Councillor Watts.
Chair, I wasn't specifically moving anything at that time. It was really just to, make my view known that I do think that, even though they've reduced heights and reduced the amount that are there, it's still extremely overbearing on these 2 communities. And even looking at the montage from Dalmellington, it's going to have a massive impact, really within those communities. So it was I wasn't moving anything, Chair. I was just making a statement.
Okay, that's clarified then. Councillor Wilson.
Just on that point, I missed out to you that Lochdoon is a triple SI site as well, so you can see these turbines visually from Lochdoon as well. And obviously the shadow flicker is a big issue because you've got the low sun there coming round Dunaskin, and it can just come right through all the wind turbines, especially these bigger ones. That shadow flicker is going to hit the communities as well and cause an impact.
Chair, just a couple of points in response there. In terms of the bid for the national park, that's a matter we have also given close consideration to. And again, without sitting here looking like we're wringing hands and making excuses, we can only assess development proposals, as can the ECU on behalf of the Scottish Ministers, based on potential impact on what is there at the moment. We have made the point, and we will make the point when we present this committee's decision to the ECU, that it might be, in an ideal world, better to have an outcome there and no, but equally the legal and statutory and planning position is that the ECU aren't obliged to await an outcome on any bid for national park status, and neither us or them can take account of what might be built in the future in terms of assessing the impact of what might be built under any consent granted here by the ECU. That would be the first point. The second point, and I'm sure it's just the way it was presented, but in terms of the statement about not considering our local communities, as Councillor Filson himself has pointed out, right throughout this report, we have identified our professional assessment of what the impacts would be in terms of the impacts on those communities, and we have fairly and in some detail set them out. In terms of the next stage of considering impacts in communities, that's what you, as the members of this committee, are here to do today. So I think it's maybe just the way that was presented, but there hasn't been any failure to take account of the impacts because they're set out liberally throughout that report, and the decision's still to be taken by yourselves having regard to those impacts. Thank you.
Chair, could I just come in as well, just to follow on? Councillor Felson had mentioned shadow flicker, and just obviously shadow flicker is something that can be fully mitigated. Standard conditions will be required where any instances of shadow flicker, times of day, etc., are programmed so that when those lighting conditions or the times of day, the times of the year when that's likely to happen, turbines that are responsible for that are shut down, so they will not operate, they won't cause shadow flicker. So shadow flicker is something that can be fully mitigated, and it's done through standard conditions on many wind farms, and it would be done here as well through any discussions with Scottish ministers if they were minded to grant consent.
Last word, Chair. Sorry, just a couple of technical points in the back of what Graham's saying there around the shadow flicker, because every day's a school day, because I'm sure anyone like me, if you ever go up to Whiteleys and they're not working, you think they're just not working, but it's actually they're now pointing to against the right direction or the wrong direction of the sun, so they're deliberately being switched off, so that's good to know. And the other one was, just to go back, Councillor Filson also mentioned the impact of the lighting. As we clarified earlier, it may be that if this were granted and if there is no agreement and acceptance by the CAA of having the aircraft activated, i.e. the red lights only working when they need to be working, then yes, you may have that scenario that you depicted there of a further X number of red lights at night on these if they are consented and built. Equally, I just draw attention to members to the point I made earlier that it's equally possible that the more avant-garde or the new technology, the aircraft activated ones, could also be in place. So it's not a certainty, and I know we all prefer certainty, but it's not a certainty as to what the final solution will be on the lighting. Therefore, unfortunately, there's not actually a certainty as to what the final impact will be of the aviation lighting. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Councillor Filson.
Just on that, David, I've been told from experts as well that this technology is quite some bit away. So I don't know if that is the case or no, but you might know better than me.
No, we're not in dispute, Councillor Filson, but I need to keep the committee right, and it's not a certainty that there will be permanent red lights either. The point is that ball's in the slates, and it's out with the gift of everyone in this room as to what the outcome might be. The point was specifically asked, I think, by the chair earlier, as what the time or someone did about the time scale for these, and we don't know. Maybe this is the one with the CAA get over whatever issues or concerns. I don't know what their issues or concerns or technical matters are. I'm just flagging up that in terms of the basis of any decision this committee might make, it's not a given that the lighting solution will either be part-time at night, only when the aircrafts activate it, or will be on during the night. Therefore, any decision should take regard or have regard to the possibility that either of those could be the final outcome. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks, David. Are there any further questions? No. Councillor Maven.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 23 is quite telling for me. It's Dunmelliton Community Council, Rungan Rankins and Stair Community Council, Ochiltree Community Council and Newcomnock Community Council. I don't see Patna and Waterside Community Council. I don't know if they've got one. And East Ayrshire Council Countryside Access Officer. I don't know. I've never even heard of that. I don't know who that access officer is. But if there's no objections and no responses from all of these community councils or the access officer, I'm wondering why us here would have objections.
Could I just comment on that? Thank you. Obviously, that was our consultation with them, although obviously the Scottish Government, through the Energy Consent Unit, did consult as well. And we know the 9cc group, which comprises the number of community councils in the southern part of the district, and the 9cc did register their support with the Energy Consent Unit for the development because of the community benefits that they'll deliver. So whilst we didn't receive response specifically through the 9cc group, they have registered the support with the Scottish ministers.
Just slightly to add to that, and Graham's largely covered it, but just to point to paragraphs 42 and 43 as well in that regard. Dunmelliton Community Council fully support the wind farm. That was a consultation response to Scottish Government. And then obviously in the South Ayrshire side, the Crosshill, Straighton, Kirkmichael do not object. So that is the kind of information we have in terms of the various community councils.
Thanks, David. Councillor Filson.
Just to clarify that, David, that one at number 43 there, page 273, the Melt Community Council, and I'm sure Councillor Stewart will back me up as we attend Partner Community Council and the Melt Community Council, as well as Dunaskin Development Trust. That's what they've got, Peter, at Dunaskin. They are all it's run by volunteers basically again, so something happened within the admin side of things for them not to object. But this one here, only what they're doing here at paragraph 43 is they're quite happy with the 9cc money, the community benefit going to them. That's what that means. That can read wrong there, as if it's as if the Melt Community Council are supportive of the wind farm. That's not the case, and I'm sure Councillor Stewart will back me up in that.
Sorry, can I just ask David to clarify again what is the formal submission made by the Mellington Community Council to the ECU?
I was only summarising what's in the report. I'm currently just trying to see if I can find that online at the moment. But that is the line that we've taken. It's fully support the Sklinchuk Wind Farm Community Benefit Package, and at the 9cc group will take the lead authority on how East Ayrshire's portion of the community benefit will be spent and distributed. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing further than that as a comment on the wind farm.
And without splitting hairs, Councillor Filson, there is no community funding package without the development. But if an objection was made to the development and that objection was overruled at public inquiry and it still went ahead, then these contributions would still be forthcoming. So they are all linked. Community councils either object or support these, same as everyone else. And what they've said is they support it because of the contributions. So there isn't a halfway house or a secondary position. They've either objected or they haven't, and they haven't.
If I can just come in the back, essentially what I read out there, I've just brought it up on the consent unit website. That is pretty much the exact wording of how the Mellington Community Council have worded that.
Well, when I seen this in the report, I asked the Mellington Community Council, and I thought that they would be objecting. That's what they made it clear to me was they were just showing support for the community benefit side of things. That's all.
Councillor Filson, I think we just need to go with what's actually been lodged by the Mellington Community Council with the Energy Consent Unit. Neither you or I can, the planning world is a dark and challenging place enough without opening up the planning multiverse of what might have been. The representation they put forward confirms it is not objecting. And that's the factual position. So if they're not objecting, they're not objecting. If the reason for not objecting is that they expect then to benefit and they're entitled, it's all legitimate to benefit from community development benefits, that's as good a reason as any other, but that's their reasoning. But you can't put in a representation that says we object, but we support because we'll get money out of it. So the wording is the wording. It's their wording. It's not for us to fall out about it. But the factual position of theirs has been properly recorded within this report. But at the end of the day, they don't reject to us. They put in their own representation to the ECU, and we have now clarified for the committee the exact wording of that representation. I think it's for members to form their own view now.
Thanks, David. You're going to
sorry, if I could just follow on from what David said there. I'm sharing the Mellington Community Council response on the screen. I don't know if you can read it, but I'll read it out for you. It says, to whom it may concern, Mellington Community Council fully support the Sklinchuk Wind Farm Community Benefit Package, and that the 9cc group will take the lead authority on how East Ayrshire's portion of the community benefit will be spent and distributed. Regards, Ray Smith, Vice Chair, Mellington Community Council. And that was their formal consultation response to the Scottish Ministers.
Thanks, Graham. I think we've kind of exhausted questions at this point, and we've got recommendations in front of us on page 263. Are we? Councillor Milton, do you want to come in?
Are they to propose or to agree? Because I understand we're a consultee on this. So if it was to go with the recommendations, then I would agree we'll go with the recommended. I propose we go with the recommendations.
If that's your position, just move the recommendations.
I'll move the recommendations.
Do we have Councillor Filson?
And I move for the East Ayrshire Council to object to the application. on the fact of visual impact, community impact, noise, shadow flicker and road safety.
Does Councillor Maitland have a second, the chair through you? Okay.
Councillor Maitland.
And does Councillor Filson have a seconder through you, chair?
Thank you. I'm happy to second Councillor Maitland.
And I'm happy to second Councillor Filson.
Okay, through you, chair, then just proceed to the vote.
Just, sorry, before we go to that, it was remiss of me right away at the very beginning. I came around the extra time now. I sit in the Glasgow Airport consultation committee, and I don't think it's got any relevance to this because we don't take part in any debates about planning or anything like that. But it was just for transparency, and I should have mentioned it right away at the beginning, and I forgot about it. Wasn't used to playing in front of such a big crowd.
Happy to do that, chair. Just to be fair to Councillor Miggy, it was something he did seek advice. We did have a discussion about last week, so happy to proceed on that basis, and we'll reflect that in the minute. Just trying to go through you then, Chair. I think we have the motion from Councillor Maitland, seconded by Councillor Mabin, and we have the amendment from Councillor Filson, seconded by Councillor Stewart. The motion being to support the paper, the recommendation of the paper, and the amendment being to object to this application as East Ayrshire Planning Authority. Given we're on Teams, then it will be vote by roll call, Chair, and just look to Cheryl now to take us through that, please. Thank you.
Thanks. If I call out your name, can you indicate if you're for the motion or the amendment, please? Councillor Graham Barton.
I vote for the motion.
Councillor John McGee.
Motion, please.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
Motion.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Motion.
Councillor Peter Mabin.
For the motion, please.
Councillor Claire Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor William Lennox.
Motion.
Councillor Drew Filson.
Amendment.
Councillor Neil Watts.
Amendment.
Councillor Elaine Stewart.
Amendment, please.
Right, so just to confirm that for 7 votes to 3, the motion has been agreed and for approval.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, members.
That concludes business. Thanks for your attendance today. Thank you.